Hi, my name is Jarita, and I'm a teacher. Now, if you're anything like me, you are always looking for new ways to engage your students in the classroom, to deepen their learning, to make things a little bit more interactive. And so I have a new technique for you. It comes from a book that I've recently reviewed, Student Engagement Techniques by Elizabeth Barkley. It's number 27 in the book if you choose to follow along with me, and it is called Send a Problem. So how exactly are we going to work this? Well, let me tell you. First, I'm going to give you a brief description of what send a problem is, and then we'll dive right into what parameters it works best under, exactly how to do it, step by step, and then we'll end with some tips and examples to see how you might be able to modify it for the discipline you teach in. Because hey, we all teach something a little bit different. So send a problem basically has students collaboratively problem solving and making decisions. They do this in groups where each group is provided a certain problem and they work together to try to solve it. They then keep those solutions confidential and pass the problem on to the next group. You can go as many rounds as you'd like to build as many potential solutions as necessary until the final group receives it and takes a look at all the information that's there to make a final determination on how to solve that problem. So it's done through collaborative discussion. The timing that you need is quite adjustable as you get to decide how many rounds you want to do and exactly how long students need to be able to solve each problem. It works much better for face-to-face learning, but with thoughtful adaptation can absolutely work in an online environment. Okay, so we've covered off all the basics about this technique. It's time to take a bit of a deeper look into exactly how you would set up and facilitate this particular student engagement technique in your classroom. I'm going to break down the steps so that it's really, really simple for you to see how this is going to work and start thinking about how you can use this in your classroom. Let's begin by looking at what you need to do to set up this activity in advance. So the first part of your prep is going to be determining the number of problems you need to have all of your groups busy at once. Some of the decision points around how many problems to have is how many students you have, how much time do you have, and just how complex are you making those problems. Next, you're going to decide how to share your problems with the students. I suggest that you may want to use file folders because that gives you some space to put any supporting documentation that you would like to give the students to aid their solutions. Also, you can insert a little envelope into that file folder as a place for them to put their solutions where they can be kept private from the other groups as they respond to the problem as well. Your last setup step is going to be to develop really clear instructions. This is so important. The students need to know what the process is going to be like, what's expected of them, how many people they're working with, how much time for each round, and how many rounds they're going to do. So that's how many problems they're going to be solving. Now here we are, it's the day of your class and you're ready to put the send a problem into effect. You're going to start by forming your groups with 4 to 6 students in each group recommended. You're going to give them those clear instructions you made. And after any clarifying questions that the students have, you're going to give them their supplies and get started on your first round. During the first round, students are going to discuss the problem, generate some ideas, choose the best alternative, record that, put it in the envelope, and then when time runs out, they are going to give that problem to the next group while receiving a new problem of their own. This begins the time for round 2. Round 2, you're going to repeat the process, and you can continue with as many rounds like this as you have time for or as you feel are necessary. When it is time for your last round, a group is going to review everything that's in that folder, including all of the potential solutions. And they are going to evaluate those potential solutions, perhaps add to them or modify them, and they're going to choose the solution that is best. You will have the opportunity for these groups to share back their decisions and why they made them. Following that, you are going to have a debrief, and this is a very important part of the process. This gives you, as the facilitator, a chance to reinforce certain content, to correct any misconceptions that came up, to add important points, and generally to discuss what the problems were and get a little bit deeper into what they mean and how the solutions could be interpreted or implemented. So it can be really great as a review for the entire activity and the topic that you created the problem set on. I hope now that you're getting the sense just how easy this technique will be to use in your classrooms. To help a little bit more though, I thought I'd go through a few examples of how this has been used in other disciplines just to help you brainstorm how it might work for yours. So consider urban planning and construction. Problem types could include how to get around certain zoning issues or how to troubleshoot certain delays in the process of building something large with multiple steps. In terms of the medical field, you could provide all sorts of information about a fictional person's symptoms. If you use that file folder trick I mentioned, you could put all sorts of information about the medical history, any charts, any supporting documentation to help the students diagnose our fictional person. That would be another example of a problem. If you were to use it in an online environment, let's say perhaps to reflect upon a particularly challenging piece of reading, let's say Pride and Prejudice, you could come up with some protected forums with groups of students to solve particular problems or come to particular understanding of certain sections. And then when you're ready, you can release the protection on those forums so that other groups can come in and see exactly what kind of thought process came from each group as they tried to solve those problems. In my class, the one that I am thinking about using this technique in is my human resources class, and I see so many applications for how I can get students solving problems. I can have them looking at performance management issues. So if somebody took these particular actions in the workplace, how would you respond? I could do things based upon the unionization process and whether the process had been violated. I can do it on the Employment Standards Act. I could even do it on health and safety, especially around some hot topics like anti-bullying or harassment. I believe that this would really lead to some rich discussions and offer the students a chance to learn in an active way, but also quite deeply as they consider all of the potential outcomes that different actions could lead to as they try to solve these problems. I hope that gave you some good ideas of how you can use Send a Problem in your classroom. Now, as you're thinking about how you're going to make this work, I'd love to give you just a few tips to help ease the process for you. One, make sure you define problem really broadly. This is going to increase the number of ideas you have of how you can apply this technique in your classroom. When you are building your problems, make sure that they are challenging enough that they have more than one possible solution, and yet they have an equal solution timing. This is really going to help with your classroom management. So a tip for you is to make sure you solve the problems yourself. See how long that it takes you, and then double or triple the amount of time for the students to solve it as they're just learning. They're not an expert like you quite yet. Another great tip is to get students involved in creating the problems. This helps get their buy-in right away, as these are things that they genuinely want to know the answers to in your particular discipline. So it's really cool to have them write them, and then you can work on refining them and solving them, and then putting it back into their hands to find the solutions collaboratively. If you have a really big group, you don't have to keep making up a ton of problems. You could have duplicate problems. So let's say you have 3 problems moving around the classroom and 2 groups at a time working on it. That's fine. That gives you more potential solutions. You just need to be really crafty with your seating plan to make sure the groups that have the same problem are spread far enough apart that their work is original. And in terms of timing, 2 possibilities could happen. One, you'll have students negotiate for more time because they're finding the challenge a little higher than what you did and are really getting into it. Next up, you may have groups that finish early, and you don't want them to have that slack time. So come up with some extensions to the problem to continue to challenge that group that solved it rather quickly. And the last idea for you is to consider this technique as an exam review, because you can cover a wide variety of topics and have students help each other in terms of learning and reviewing the content. You have all the information now you need to use this particular student engagement technique in your classroom. Have you already used Send a Problem in your classroom? Are you just thinking about it and want to kick around some ideas? Well, leave me a comment down below, and I would certainly be happy to respond, as well as any of the other learners in our community, to help share ideas. I look forward to hearing about your experiences and any feedback you have on the information I've presented to you today. I've also included down below information about the book in which this engagement technique came from. There are so many cool ideas in there that it might also give you some more ideas on how to make learning more active and interesting in your classroom, because hey, the whole goal is to help our students learn.